Good morning, everyone. It's a sunny Saturday, July the 10th, and we are here to celebrate what we love most about Shawnigan Lake and also to look ahead to the future. So our topic today is Shawnigan, the brand, then and now. Sorry, let me get to where I should be with our announcements. All right, everyone can see my screen okay?
Yep.
So we invite you to have fun in this Zoom meeting, to use the chat, to raise your hand and react, because we're listening, asking, and taking notes, and we want to learn from each other and collaborate. So this is part 2 of the Think Shawnigan series, and I'd like to welcome our special guests as we roll our announcements. Ben Riel is on the call from Relax Collective, Lori Trelaw from Shawnigan Lake Museum, and Netta Bose. Am I saying that right, Netta?
It's Boss.
Boss, yes, I should say it correctly. And also, I tend to throw a Dutch spin on everything, having lived in the Netherlands, so forgive me. And your company is called Articulate.
Yes.
And that is I want to say it's a branding powerhouse, but if you would like to elaborate on that during your time, please obviously feel free to do so. And your mission with your Airbnb and hospitality is the lakefront dream. I hope I tried to capture that in a 3-word descriptor. So as we get started, I'd like to take a moment to pause, to reflect, to honor, and to remember. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of Shawnigan, Shawnigan, the Hulkaminam speaking peoples who hunted and gathered in this area. We respect their caring connections to each other and the places where we live, work, and play. And the work of Rotary is an inclusive work. We are interested and keen to collaborate with all of the groups that have served the community, have worked hard to understand and to leverage all of the resources that we have, as well as to safeguard the beautiful treasure that we have in terms of our natural resources, our ability to use the forest, the lake, to have access to nature. It's a welcome respite and a treasure that we need to protect. And with Rotary and with our EcoClub, we practice something called the 4-way test, and that's in the lower left corner of your screen. So as we share today, and of all the things we do in our service club, the things we think, say, or do, we ask ourselves, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? And it's doing this that gives us permission to do good in the world. And I feel that this is a positive thing. It's a very freeing thing that we don't have to be afraid to take a step forward and take a step out to make positive change happen. So thank you for bearing with that. And as always, we are in a growth mode. So we grow vibrant leaders. These are volunteers who inspire to believe Rotary achieves new things. That's the acronym for Vibrant. It's open to everyone and anyone who's interested in community service. For just $5 a week, you can belong in Rotary. And we have lots of benefits, including professional development and networking, especially as we open up and start to travel again. Now, we have ongoing community service projects this summer. I invite you to check out the work we're doing at Masons. We've just added some fresh mulch. I would like to thank Ben and Casey for helping uncover this wonderful source of mulch. This was under my yard waste pile this last week. And so they hauled 2 loads for me to Fisher Road, and in doing so, we're also rehabilitating the forest edge where we live alongside our property, which is really important because although it's organic material, it is not meant to be along the forest edge. And so we're making sure this organic material gets to where it needs to be. We're still accepting plant donations, and we now have watering access 24/7. We have a new hose and nozzle that you can get to, and we can take care of the plants that we have there that we're experimenting with. Our Francis Kelsey Garden job is also ongoing. Every Tuesday we can harvest greens and anything else that's ready to take to the food bank. So they are ready and waiting to accept that from us. And it's been fabulous to do this, but I'll show you in the pictures. It's not all Instagrammable. That's the best way I can put it. But so I would like to propose that at the end of this month, on our 5th Saturday, Saturday, July the 31st, that we put together a multi-club work party. So I will check with you, Steve, but the idea is that from the morning hours that we would work to get the weeds cleared away, and I'll show you in the pictures. So, and hopefully we'll feed our volunteers. So we're weeding and feeding. Here's the team calendar link. And you will see that at our website as well. We're building a new website through WordPress that'll be launched still this month. I'd like to thank our ongoing Litter Watch volunteers in case there was anyone on the call that does this. I know I do. It's kind of fun. It's great exercise as well as you're walking through the community to be packing a set of tongs or gloves and a bag. This last week, Anna Rattan stopped me, grabbed some supplies, and cleaned up a mess at Mason's Beach. And I know the community really appreciates this work that we do. I have some pictures here from our charter party. Looks like it's all kind of mushed together. Unfortunately, yeah, the news, let me just see if I can move this around. No, I can't because it's part of the slide. But I would like to thank everyone who was at our charter party. It was very hot, but also very warm in terms of the feeling that was there, that we were celebrating the first EcoClub in Canada to charter. It's really exciting through Rotary to create these new cause-based clubs and to have a focus on the environment so that we can make a positive difference in an intentional way as we learn together and share our knowledge. We want to also do a shout out to the people who have been working so hard at our different plantings. So this is Jenny Stevens. She's watering here the plants we were putting in at the rock gardens in front of Mason's, and these have been mulched as well. Here's the garden at Francis Kelsey. From a distance, we can always access it as long as the gates are open, or we can walk in, obviously, from the roadway if the gates are locked. So it is quite a big garden plot. This is the Instagrammable part of the garden. So I was able to capture some flowers and some pollinators at work. And there's a green bin full of the different kale and chard and other things that they could use. But yeah, this is what we're dealing with for our work party at the end of July, is wanting to get a hold of the weeds and make sure the students have something coordinated and cleaned up to work with once they come back to school at the end of August. So there is time to work on this. I want to also give a shout out to Jasmine, who's working hard at Shawnigan Lake School. I got to have a tour of their grow dome this week, and you can see some of the different specimens that she's working on there. And it's interesting how she's had to control the environment with the added heat stressors. So she's got lots of shade fabric and other things I was learning about, as well as her trellis systems and her irrigation. So really interesting. It looks like I've covered over most of my stuff here, unfortunately, so I'll have to share the dates again. Let's just see if I can fix that for you, because we need to talk about our upcoming dates. So July the 24th, there will be no Zoom meeting. July the 31st is the proposed work party. We're ongoing with our adventuring and gardening, of course. So share your photos online. I'm happy to share them with others. August 14th, we'll be Zooming again. I'm looking to get WildSafe and FireSmart to be members of our panel to talk about caring for our environmental crisis opportunities. So we have bears getting into garbage, we have dry areas, we have people tossing cigarette butts. What can we do proactively to protect these interactions and potential hazards? August 28th, there is no Zoom meeting, so we'll probably be doing an adventure. Stay tuned. And then September 11th, we have a special coaching session coming up with Carol Carter. She's a world champion Toastmaster, public speaker, and she has something called paper airplane goal setting, which I did a few years back and I still have. This was one of the things that informed the formation of this club actually was learning to set goals in that regard. So in today's session, once again, we acknowledge the First Nations who have gone before us, and then as Rotarians and as community members, we are together. We see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities and in ourselves. So thanks to the collaborative effort of many contributors, we have this guide to follow as we gather again in 2021. And so that sets the stage for our talk today. And I have to be honest with all of you, most Rotary clubs, they would just kill to have, and that sounds bad, but they would be very jealous of us to have this assessment already done for us, this blueprint to follow of ideas, because making a proper community assessment is always the first role of a Rotary club, is facilitating that. And we have it as of January 2020, just waiting to be used. So together we inspire as people of action. And once again, I'd like to introduce our panel, Ben, Lori, and Netta. So thank you very much. I'm going to stop screen sharing, but I will jump to the documents I have ready from the design guide, which talks about the different amenities for the village. So thank you for bearing with me on the announcements. Does anyone have any questions before we move forward? All right, so feel free, everyone, to unmute and we can get started, and we can also use the chat. So Ben, I'm going to introduce you first. You're first in the lineup, and your company does feature brandwear. Maybe you could tell us a bit about how you got started with Relax Collective as a resident of Shawnigan, and how that resonated with you in terms of the environment.
Well, I firstly thought that, the most important way to get a message across, I always found, was people wearing funny sayings and things on hoodies. And that's how the best kind of advertisement are people, because they're always walking billboards. And I also noticed at the same time, simultaneously, that there was a lot of more waste in the last coming years, as our tourism's increased in Shawnigan Lake and stuff, and there's a lot more litter in the sides of the roads, a lot more litter in the provincial park areas, particularly where Burnt Bridge is, in the Coxsila River Provincial Park. I've definitely noticed an increase in stuff out there. And of course, when you start seeing litter that frequently, it really starts to get at you, especially when it's your backyard. Me and Casey went out and we did a litter pick. We just walked out to the end of our driveway, and we went up from where my family's house is located in Shawnigan's, just near the gas line trail. And it was only maybe a kilometer walk to the gas line trail, and we filled up 3 full bags of garbage in the side. And overgrowth happens quite a bit in the sides of the road, so you don't always see it, but if you actually take the time to stop and look in, it was amazing how much stuff we could find in such a short little area. And I knew there was a problem with litter. I knew there was a problem. Obviously, I ride motocross bikes, and so I'd go trail riding frequently, and in the back trails and stuff, there was always beer cans, the obvious normal things that get littered out there. But then I just started noticing quite a bit of an increase, and I thought that there is something that should have been done about it. So with Relax, obviously every article of clothing we sell, we clean up 1 pound of waste. Every article of clothing we print for other companies, we clean up 1 pound of waste as well. So I wanted to be able to start taking on this problem in an official capacity. And so I've been very fortunate this year. We partnered up with Youth 2020 Can Cowichan and Volunteer Cowichan, and they've been sending out we had to shrink wrap it quite a bit during whenever we had more lockdowns and stuff. But when we had the most open, we had up to, I think, 12 people on one cleanup, and that was really exciting. So we did the Cow Bay Nature Estuary, we did Avril Creek Park, we did the general area on the west side of the lake in Shawnigan, up and down the roadsides, and we did a cleanup that was partnered with the major event that we did. The area behind Duncan Meadows, next to Lake Cowichan Highway, and also up in Chemainus. And we got another 800 pounds from that. Iowa Creek Park was 900. We had 1,144 pounds out of the nature estuary. So it's always really inspiring now that we're picking it up beyond just the local group, and we're using, youth especially to volunteer their time. And, they'd give us a day on their Saturday or a day on a Sunday. And, everybody was really happy at the end. There was a lot of smiles and stuff. And I always kept saying to them, a lot of people talk the talk. They say they hate seeing litter. They hate seeing our parks getting dirty. They hate seeing our trails getting shut down, but nobody really does anything about it. So I gave them a pat on the back, and I was like, there's a lot of kids that could be sitting at home hungover right now, or not wanting to go out, not wanting to do anything, and here you guys are out in the blister and heat picking up garbage, and doing community service. And it gave a lot of people a lot of very warm feeling inside, I'd say. And we always do like little prizes and stuff, and what's the most interesting thing you find, and it always creates some laughs with people looking around and seeing, oh, we found a toy boat, or always one shoe, never a pair. That's always one shoe. And very interesting things. And you can always kind of see what happened to somebody or whatever it may be. They always leave like a scene of evidence behind, and you can almost feel like forensics a little bit, because you can find some crazy things. And like, we even had one of our volunteers, they found a fully unopened bottle of liquor that somebody just dropped on the side of the road. And it was unbelievable, because it makes you think, like, well, what are you doing with all this? Especially like if the person dropped a full bottle of liquor on the side of the road, they're probably pretty pissed. You'd think they'd go back and check up for it, but sometimes people are just in a hurry, or wherever they may be going. So I always found it fascinating how good it brought everybody together, because I didn't know any of these kids, outside of knowing them through Holly and Allie at Youth Couch. And then when we connected and we got to know all the conversations we get, and everybody's like, oh, look at what I found, this, look at that over there, can you believe this? And it's like, well, yeah, I can. There's a lot of stuff out here. And especially when we cleaned up in the Cow Bay Nature Estuary, we also had some groups to the periphery next to Couch and Bay, where there's a lot of vans that end up parking and stuff there, and we ended up cleaning up pretty good on those beaches there. And when you drive by in Couch and Bay, and you don't see it, or you don't see that big mess there anymore, it's a pretty good feeling. Now, obviously, it is a high traffic area, so we need to go reattend to it now. Again, I think we'll do a victory lap back through again, because there was still so much more to get, but it was such a massive area. So that was kind of the main reason I started. It was just, I was sick of seeing our backyard getting shut down, and we're getting less and less access every day to our own recreational areas. And if it's outside of the CVRD jurisdiction, it's never going to get cleaned up. It's going to get left there, and somebody needed to do something about it. So that's why we started that.
Fantastic. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Ben? So Ben, I see moving forward, galvanizing our youth to patrol as well, like to walk in groups. Like you say, it's very, it's a conversation starter. These found objects tend to help us, if we're like archaeologists, modern day archaeologists, like what are people actually doing with all of these things?
Well, and the one thing too that was really inspiring is because obviously Shawnigan Lake has a closed campus, and when we did the Shawnigan Lake Clean Where You Are event, they didn't have to observe the same social distancing standards that everybody else did. So they got to actually, group together full classes of kids and go out, and the amount they got in that bin was absolutely insane. And for me, I was like, this is the best problem I ever had, because I had like 5 or 6 places I had planned out, and I was like, okay, this is where we're sending all of our volunteers. And I went out the day before, and I was like, I'm just gonna go recheck up to make sure that it's all good. And every single place I went that we had our volunteers going to was completely cleaned out. And I was like, okay, this feels good, but now I'm in a pickle. So luckily we actually got to switch over and go to clean some other areas. and we did some roadsides and stuff, and obviously we have a lot of safety gear, and so we can work in a little bit of more high hazard areas. Everybody was wearing busy vests and whatnot, and they have to go through their safety plan, and obviously Shawnigan Lake's not going to have 200 300 safety vests for all their kids, so they went and did off-road side areas, and it was really impressive of what they did. When I talked to them on the phone, he's like, yeah, I was not expecting to get this much. And that really inspiring for me, because when it was always just me and Casey and then two of my buddies, and I'll be like, okay, look guys, I'll buy you guys a case of beer and you guys can just go out and I'll drive, don't worry about it, and we'll just go clean all this up. And they're like, okay. And we'd get 300 400 500 pounds, and then you see what 10 12 people could do in 3 hours, and they do 1,200 pounds, and then you see what 200 people can do, and they get a few tons in one day. So it really makes it, I always get overwhelmed when I know how much waste gets put into the environment every day. But if you scale it up, it's just like compound interest in finance. The more that people work together, and the more that you can compound people to actually all go and do cleanups, there's going to be a way larger exponential return in cleaning up litter in our communities. And that kind of re-inspired me. Pardon? The fridge story. Oh, actually, yeah, we went to do a separate cleanup after we got rid of all the volunteers. Because we had them out for 2 hours and it was too hot out, and we went up going to. Does everybody know where North Road is behind Duncan Meadows?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a little dump area there that often gets refuse. There was 3 40-year-old guys in a truck, and that's right next to Bings Creek. We're talking like it's across the street from Bings Creek, and there's 3 40-year-old guys pull up, and they're eyeballing us and staring us down. And I just kind of like stood back up and I just kind of stared at them too. And they had an old fridge in the back of their truck, and they just kind of like pulled up, and then they pulled like 50 feet down the road, and they saw that we weren't leaving, and they saw that we were cleaning it up, and they kind of were just like, like looking around the area, and I'm like, what do you guys stopping to sightsee out here? Like the empty industrial park? Like, yeah, it's a beautiful view.
Very suspicious.
And so they actually ended up, yeah, they actually ended up getting back in their truck, and they drove, and we followed them right into Bings Creek, and they dropped it off in the dump. And then when they were driving out, like they wouldn't look at me, and I just like screamed out the window, I was like, you made the right choice today. And then like I gave them a thumbs up, and they were just like, and it was funny because they looked like teenagers when their mom caught them doing something wrong, right? And it was an empowering feeling, because I was just like, yeah, you should feel guilty right now, because we knew exactly what they're out there doing, because like you went to the dump right after. Why would you stop here? You wanted to check this out. And they just drove by slowly, 20 kilometers an hour, like 3 perfectly healthy, mid 40s guys. And it's like, I don't want to assume anything, but it's like, well, if there's 3 of you, like you could probably split the $10 it'd take to drop off this refrigerator. I'm like, you guys are in a $50,000 truck. I feel like you can afford the dump fees to go drop this off. I'm like, you drove all the way out here. All you needed to do was go 500 more feet to the dump. And so that was also an empowering feeling, because it was like, even in that moment, there was a teachable moment, because they didn't see, it's easy for people to write off if there's workers cleaning it up, right? And they're like, oh, well, I'm giving them employment, or, whatever somebody takes to justify something to themselves. But they saw volunteers, just a couple kids cleaning this up, and, it made them feel guilty.
Totally.
And they could have waited till we left to dump it, but they didn't. And we went to the dump right with them, right? So I seeing that actual change happen in a person, especially when people who want to do good, that's amazing. But when people who don't want to do good, that's 10 times more important, because that's a change of behavior. And if you can change behavior, then you can really make a difference.
So if I could sum up everything that you just shared, it would be to see and to be seen doing good. And this is something that came out of a chat I had with Netta over the phone this week, is to, if you can distill your brand to actually have that tagline, or that reason for being, what your why is to see opportunities and to be seen doing good. And so I'm going to transition us back to our design guide. I'm going to share my screen here, because I'd like to show you one of the features of the design guide. Now, all these documents are found at the CVRD site, but this shows us some of the amenities, if I can zoom in and you can see. So possibly one of the ways the Rotary Club can help is to create opportunities for people to do the right thing and to have it be done in an attractive way. And so I'd like to just throw this out there, that if we had more sponsored receptacles in places that would prevent litter from where we obviously want people to be out in nature, there just doesn't seem to be enough opportunities to put it away. And when I was at Old Mill Park last night, there was piles of garbage beside the one garbage can. I mean, like pizza boxes, you name it. There was probably 4 cans worth of garbage there at the end of the day. And it was overwhelming to think, wow, like we need a schedule for regular pickup, whether it's youth going out, whether it's people, users themselves, leaving no trace. So does anyone have any thoughts on that? And then Lori, you're on deck to share next.
Actually, I read an interesting statistic, and I think it was like 60% of litter is found within 20 meters of a garbage can. So I always found that as something kind of funny, because it was like, oh, you know, people are so close. But it is important too, because I do know there's a lot of people like who, you know, use the back trails and stuff, and they'll just, yeah, especially like a lot of people will go take a bunch of friends out, go wheeling in the back area, and then a bunch of friends are drinking beer, and they're like, well, I don't want all these empties in my car when they leave, so they dump them off in the forest before they go back on the roads. And I think it would be important to, you know, maybe put some of these at trailheads and stuff, and just recycling bins. And obviously you'd want to have it so the holes to the entrance of the bins are quite small, so people can't just go dump, you know, their residential waste or whatever it may be in there. But you know, and pardon?
Depending on location, you have to worry about wildlife as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
So you have to think about the structural integrity of the
Of the can. But I think the most important thing is like, you know, if you had a recycling bin or, you know, garbage can at the entrance and exits of like known trailheads, and just even add a sign and just be like, I'm right here, like, you know, and it's like, put your garbage in me. Like, it's like, it doesn't need to go out there. Like, even if there's a sign or something that people know the entrance to exit the trail, and there's just a little something to, you know, I don't want to say it like this, but to instill a little bit of guilt per se, positive peer pressure, you know, that could increase. And it would be interesting to be able to track, like if there's a way to track the metrics on it to see how much of a percentage of impact it actually makes on a given trail. And I think that would be an important addition to, you know, some of the areas that don't have it.
And here I'm just showing visuals on the areas that I walk in my village litter pickup loop, and none of these spaces have garbage cans that I know of. And they could very much be also a receptacle for art on the outside, or business shout outs, different ways of messaging, positive messaging, and also historical messaging as well. So with that thought, I'd like to invite Lori to share what she has on her mind in terms of the Shawnigan brand, where it has originated from, and particularly the logo that we see when we celebrate the museum in amongst us. So please take it away, Lori. And also keep in mind that our club too is looking for ways to express themselves with not only just a logo, because we have to show the Rotary gears, but how can we connect the brand of Shawnigan with the brand of our EcoClub? And Ben will be coming to you for maybe special hats or something that one size fits all. I love the camo hats, but we do need to be seen and visible doing good. So please keep your thinking caps on. So Lori, I invite you to take the floor.
Thank you. I just wanted to add one comment to Ben, and that is that even though there are garbage cans out in front of the Aitken and Fraser, we're constantly picking up litter on the museum grounds and Elsie Miles Park. And, you know, it's steps away. It's hard to imagine why people can't put it in the right spot. But yeah, so we moved to Shawnigan Lake in 2001, and we came from Saanich, which is a fairly well-oiled machine, so to speak. When we came to Shawnigan, we realized that there was a huge need for doing good in the area. And that started with, for me, with the museum that was almost at death's door. Had I not walked in 2004, it would not be here today. It was that close to being gone. And the need just goes on. So in 2011, we started the Shawnigan Focus so that we could communicate with the community, and we hoped that it would be a positive influence on the community where everybody, every group in the area could tell the community what they were doing and how they were doing it and encourage people to get involved. That one has been successful, but we would actually like more engagement from different groups. It's interesting because there's such a need. There was a village committee in 2012 that I was involved in, and doing the same thing as we're talking about right now, and how what Shawnigan means to people. And that was under the directorship of Bruce Fraser, but there was a large number of people involved, including people who are on this call and who are members, Jenny, Marcy, myself. I also sat on the committee to buy Baldy, which we did for the community, because we knew that if we didn't buy Baldy, and I know this is not just talking about my logo, it's talking about our sense of community and what's important to the community. And people for well over 100 years had been using Baldy, assuming that it was just a park and not that it was private land. And we had an opportunity once it went for sale to acquire it, and it almost went to a resort, a group of people who wanted to put a resort at the top, and they blasted the driveway in the back up to the top. They blasted off the top, and we were fortunate enough in 2015 to make an offer, and with the help of donations and the CVRD, we were able to buy it. So it is now, it always was part of our identity, and it is now ours and part of our identity. The same with the pavilion. I was also on that steering committee. It's like we needed Shawnigan to change, to grow, to show that we had places to gather and they were free and available for everyone. And I think that maybe that's what I'm trying to say, is that the change, we need to continue the change in Shawnigan. I think Shawnigan was a huge success. And again, people on this call were involved in making that happen as well. And it gave us a blueprint for how we could see our community. And it doesn't mean that we're stuck to that design. As you all know, we've got a new park and it wasn't in that plan. But the new park is an awesome addition to access to the waterfront. For people who aren't living on the waterfront, we need to give more access to those people to be able to enjoy it the same way that we do. In terms of our logo, we wanted to represent that, and I don't know whether I can share the logo for those of people who haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Or do you have it there, Kim?
What I can do, yes, is I can go to that, or I can give you co-hosting, but yeah, I'll share my screen, and I have.
We wanted people to
Just a moment.
Have that warm feeling that most of us have when we think about Shawnigan Lake. And
Here we go.
we had that's not it, but
yeah, it's your website.
That's a great painting. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it must be here.
Oh, it's right up here under the painting on the main page right there.
Yeah.
So we had a local artist draw so it was done locally, and it's two people in a boat with an island and the trees in behind, to represent the nature, the feeling that we get from being at Shawnigan. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, and it's on a lot of the merchandise, which is why I'm here at the
Right.
page just to see. But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, you know, we think it's a great logo and very representative of the lake. But I
It
think
is.
that in terms of doing good, as you said earlier, Kim, there's so much to be done at Shawnigan, and I feel like Shawnigan sucked me in when we moved here permanently, and I have become so involved, so immersed in the community for doing good. And yeah, it's awesome. We've made tons of progress, and we will continue. Just so you know, we've saved just over $1 million for the expansion of the museum. We just recently got a very, very large donation towards the project. So we're very close, and with any luck, we'll start this fall.
I actually, can I interject here? I really like the stories, Lori. I forgot his name, but I met him at one of the events that Netta put on pre-COVID. And I really I picked his brain, and the other guy who works at the museum, and he really had so many fascinating stories and really educated me on the history of Shawnigan. I felt bad because I kind of took him away from the conversation for like a good 20 minutes because I just wanted to, you know everything, because I moved here originally from Souk, and I didn't grow up here. So I wanted to know all of the kind of the cool, like the actual, as close to factual lore as there is, because obviously there's all these stories and stuff, but you know how the game of telephone works, to get diluted.
Absolutely.
Yes. So I wanted to go to the source, and I wanted to ask about, like the First Nations bands that were here before and aren't here now. And he kind of explained everything to me and all the local like historical stories. And it was really interesting to hear that. And I also wanted to just touch on, when I was working for the district of Saanich, there's a lot of parks in Saanich and a lot of parks in Victoria, but now they want to make them all pay parking, and it's kind of a big controversy. So when you said that it's important that our parks are free to access, that's really something that like I definitely support and I completely agree with, because obviously, yes, it's important to, like have funding for parks. But I definitely noticed that like a lot of families like, well, we come here because it's free. Like we don't, if we have to pay $8.50 to park here for the day, like we don't want to come out here anymore. That really creates a barrier. And yeah, and I think it's really important to, maintain that free or, maximum $1.50 parking, or, very, very lower the barriers, the cost barriers for families, especially there is a lot of low income families in the Cowichan Valley, and to be able to still let them have access to these parks and stuff is very important. So I agree, and I'm very supporting with what you were saying earlier there about the parks.
Thanks. Yeah, I think one of the things that we tried to do with the Parks Commission, and it came up over and over, the only place that I would tend to want to put a cost is loading boats onto the lake, only so that they could be controlled a little bit better. It's not a very big lake, and there are some boats a lot of ocean boats in the last couple of years that really shouldn't be on the lake. So it hasn't happened yet, but I think that down the road, that is going to be very important for the environment of the lake, to take the K numbers and have a fee to get on the lake, make sure that they go through a wash process for the safety and environmental health of our lake.
I have a question about that too, because when I look at this logo, I see a non-motorized enjoyment of the lake. And I tell you, it's been very challenging to try to get in some good paddle time. I've been going early or late in the day, and you still get bounced around big time. So it would be so nice if we could have all the users kind of represented and share, because this nostalgic view of a quiet paddle is very rare during the summer.
You're so right. In fact, I rarely take my kayak out. We're in a narrow area, and the big boats, even though it's recommended that they don't come through here, they do. And I think, again, going back to limiting the number and the type of boats that are allowed on the lake will help in the future with that.
Mm-hmm. But I also believe it's education. So like,
Yeah.
for example, last night I was at the galley and there's a boat, like some of these wake setter boats are really too big for the lake. And
Absolutely.
they're mooring at the galley and they're coming up from wherever. So they're not lake people. And so there's one in particular that has very distinctive paint job on it. So I said to Rich, I said, could you talk to that guy for me? Because people are complaining about his etiquette on the lake and he needs to be educated. And I said, and if he doesn't get educated and doesn't behave, his call number is going to be called into the RCMP. And then there was another place, again, you have all these people that are renting places and people are coming up with their boat for the week. And so they paid a lot of money to be there. So there's an entitlement. So I was down swimming the other night and I heard some neighbors having this full on rant about this boat that had come in and wake setter and how it had just, swamped out everybody. So I knew the owner of who the place, and then these people are like, yeah, get it on Facebook, like call them out. And so I called the owner of the rental and said, hey, this is what's happening. You might want to get ahead of it. And the attitude of the owner was, well, I wasn't there. I didn't see it. So I don't really know, but okay, I'll talk to him. And I said, well, you want to get ahead of this because they've got your address. They're going to call you out on Facebook. And sure enough, it went on Facebook and it became this full rant. So I private messaged the person and said, hey, the owner's been contacted. They've talked to the renter and then it's quieted down since then. So I just really believe that until we can, people have to pay to launch in the lake, that it's really about education.
True.
Which is, but then I could, this is a very big conversation, but then we also talk about milfoil. And I heard this summer that people are actually throwing chlorine pucks, the same chlorine pucks they use for the hot tubs around their docks to kill the milfoil. So, we all have to agree to disagree on how we're going to protect the lake, whether we're on whether we own or not. And to me, it's a real education piece.
Yeah. Well,
same thing with the garbage. Sorry, I'm just interjecting here for a minute. Like we can have all the so the CVRD will tell you they don't have enough budget for garbage cans. And that's why there's limited amounts and like even the West Provincial Park, at the end of a long week, a hot weekend, like there's piles of garbage around the cans, but CVRD will tell you that they don't have budget to maintain all of those garbage cans, which is why they don't.
But why don't they?
Sorry, go ahead.
Summer students to do some of that, monitoring the boats, monitoring the garbage.
But Lori, I would not wish that on a student. These guys that are coming up that are at, for example, at Rich's at the marina. Well, I can tell you tons of stories, like even people I know that are on the lake that have encounters with some of these guys on these wake setters. They're bullies.
Yeah.
And they feel like they got a lot of power because they're in these boats. And now I'm not saying they're all like that, but it's just, you just need a few of them that are going to ruin it for everybody.
True.
Netta, would you like to tell us more about what you see from your perspective? Because this is a natural segue into, I'm comfortable with going a few minutes over. Obviously, we need to give you the time you deserve in terms of what you'd like to share. So please jump in.
So what I see for Shawnigan?
Yeah, the idea is that we talked about lakefront access very, very briefly, that it's something we hope to create. And I know our president, Steve, is one of his mandates. Steve, if you'd like to jump in at any time, is just to say access for all, to get people out in nature. It's really important. It helps us have that sense of ownership and pride in our community.
Well, I would love to see all the organizations and associations and the MOTI and MOE and FLNRO and CVRD. I like to see us all work together to agree to disagree on how we're going to move forward. It's not going to work for all of us. I have been at community meetings where we talked about road ends, and part of the problem with the road ends is, again, budget. You put in a road end access and make it a park, then you need a garbage can because people are dumping garbage and abusing that amenity, and then who's going to be monitoring it? And we were making, like, there were a couple of road ends that were designated to be park, and Bruce Fraser shot it down, you know, before Sonia and Sierra. So now we're trying to, you know, backtrack and get back to that starting place. And then it's a tricky one. And then you've got, again, some people up from the city that have squatted on different road ends and have got derelict docks there, and they're just making it absolute hell for anybody that comes near that road end that has a right to be there. And how do you get the CVRD and all the other governing agencies to actually act? And in the last community meeting that was held regarding road ends, I think Butler Road was identified because there's a guy there that's actually taken over the road end, put up a gate, put up a sign that says this is private property when it's not private property. He doesn't even own waterfront, and he's just taken it over for himself. Now, the residents on Butler Bay in that area, they were supposedly taking him to task and working with the Ministry of Transportation, I believe it was, to resolve that. But that's been 2 years and nothing's happened. So,
Yeah.
Now, Netta, as a private landowner, you created a vision and a story for how you can connect the Shawnigan brand then and now. So you created this vintage feel and made it possible for people to taste that dream, if you will, as a rental situation. And now I think you're moving forward in terms of even more flexibility. Would you like to speak to any of that part as well?
Well, 18 months ago, I did buy a piece of waterfront. So I'm just going to back up a little bit. So I know that there's roughly about 650 civic addresses around Shawnigan Lake that people can actually say they own Shawnigan waterfront. And these are my stats. I'm just guessing. I don't know how true this is or how accurate it is, but let's say half of them are owned by multi-generational families. And so they will never leave the property. And this really kind of hit home for me because when I bought my first waterfront 18 months ago, I was the third owner. So the original owner was from 1912. It was purchased in 1957, and I bought it from the owners from 1957. And the second piece that I just bought a couple months ago, again, I've been told I'm the second owner, and the first owners had it since the early 40s. And I just realized that these properties are multi-generational. So that means that only 350 are actually come up for sale and are something that can be purchased. And I've just been really watching who's been purchasing waterfront over the last couple of years. And it's really people, not people that want to live up here, but what's happening is that you have this multi-generational property, and then the kids are getting older and they have kids, and now all of a sudden these kids are in their 20s, for example, and they have boyfriends and girlfriends. So there's not room anymore for them to stay at the waterfront, and they have means, and so they're now looking for their own waterfront. So that multi-generational is actually transferring out, and people are buying just so that they can have a place at the lake and have that access. And then there are other people who have waterfront who are looking to buy other waterfronts so then they can rent because they know the value of owning waterfront at Shawnigan. So what's your question again?
So vintage cabins, it was hugely successful and
Yes.
created a whole brand story that I think we have lessons to learn from what you've done.
So what I really wanted to do with vintage cabins was really celebrate the history of the property. and not tear down the cabins. So the one cabin was built in 1912 by a tailor from Victoria. And then the rumor is that the second cabin was built in 1945. He wanted his two sons to learn how to build, and they built this little cabin right on the water. And then years later, it got added to. And I really wanted to celebrate the history of the property. What was really interesting to me was how people wanted to rent because they wanted to experience that history, whatever that story was. So by being there, and then my tagline is where life is still. And so this second piece of, so I am in marketing and branding. I just didn't realize how powerful a brand can be. And so the second property that I purchased, it was by word of mouth, and the owner was 79 years old. And he had other people that wanted to buy it. And he said to me, I want you to buy my property because I know you won't tear my cabins down. So I see these as legacy purchases. People are really invested in their properties, especially if they're multi-generational, and it's celebrating the history. You know, it's unfortunate that the people that purchased vintage cabins took down all the trees. It's private property. They have the right to do it. There was a beautiful arbutus tree that to me was iconic to the property, and it was taken down. So, you know, if I were looking big picture, if we could just create this amazing sense of place and have people be very prideful of this sense of place, and we're waterfront owner, anybody that's on the water that's from here is so proud of it that they say, hey, wait a minute, you can't do that. Or maybe I should think twice about throwing chlorine pucks in Shawnigan Lake, or whatever it is that they're doing. Or, you know, I was talking to somebody else on Shawnigan and saying, you know, people are pulling out the riparian and putting in sandy beaches. And so it's changing the way that the water moves on the lake, which is to your point, Kim, about not being able to get a nice paddle in. It's not just all the boats, it's what all the waterfront owners are doing to the waterfront. But the other piece, so somebody pointed this out to me, people are also putting in bigger and bigger docks, and they're getting longer. So if we were to measure how many linear feet of dock there was in the 40s compared to what there is now, my guess is it's significantly larger. So all those docks create a bounce back too. And then if the docks aren't built correctly, where I forget what it is, the supports need to go a certain way so that the water can flow through, then you get even more bounce back. And so that's why I take it back to education and creating a really strong sense of place where people just really want to experience that, and then also to, you know, have ownership for it. So whether you own on the lake or not, you're just there for the day, you take ownership and pride in it.
Yeah. The only thing about education is some of the people coming onto the lake don't care whether they're educated or.
No, but that's why I'd say also create that sense of place and that pride, because then it'd be like, if you had, for example, two wakeboard boats on the lake, and one is just being a real redneck, and the other one, the guy understands that sense of place, then you create that peer pressure, right? Where the one guy would say, hey, dude, like, smarten up. Like, this is not how we behave on Shawnigan. And so if you could create that, right? Or what Ben did with those two guys at Bing Creek, right? You know, you have a young guy that's saying, hey, wait a second, guys, like, this is not okay. I'm proud of my environment. I hope, or if neighbors know that people are throwing chlorine pucks, like, it's like, hey, wait a second, this is not what we do at Shawnigan. This is not how we be. Okay. So creating that peer pressure as well.
How do we feel about that? Does anyone else want to add to this proposed solution? Is the community, the peer pressure, the sense of connection that rogues aren't tolerated.
I like that idea, Netta, and we're doing something like that here on our little street, because we have a street, Angus Road, and a bay where we're all sort of in this bay, and we're kind of banding together to make like these agreements about our road and about our bay, you know, no wake zone coming in and out, and we're trying to get everybody on the bay to sign on to these agreements, because we all talk about it, so it's not going to be hard for us to get everyone to sign on to it. But we also have 3 properties in our bay that are, 2 have just sold and another one's for sale, so we know newbies are coming in, and we want to be able to say, hey, the whole neighborhood here has agreed to these, you know, agreements, and here, we would like to invite you to also agree with us. So it's the same idea as you're saying, that peer pressure within our little bay. And all you can do is work on your own little, you know, community, but one community at a time, it could spread around the lake. So anyway.
I think that's a brilliant idea, Dinah, and maybe we could use that as an example and as a case study, because, you know, that one property, when it sells, let's say that person doesn't want to, you know, doesn't really agree or whatever, they know they're being watched. That's where that peer pressure comes into place, right? Like if they're gonna think twice about throwing in chlorine pucks or whatever that looks like, because they're gonna feel it. And people, like, it's just amazing how people watch. Like, you think people can't see you, and then then they tell you what they saw. It's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, we're all kind of exposed out there on our docks in a way.
We very much are. So I really, really, really like that idea. And you know, but Butler Road is another, maybe if you get it going and whatever, maybe there's this package, right? There's this lake waterfront, because it would also, like, I don't want to be exclusive just to waterfront owners, but but by doing that, starting with the waterfront owners, it would slowly create inclusion to people who want to access these road ends. If that makes any sense.
We'll do my lunch.
And
Okay.
to your point, Lori, the other thing that I know that is in the works is Director Acton is working, I believe, with the CDRD on removing or not removing, but creating a proper boat launch at the West Provincial Park, so that, and taking it away from Government Wharf, because somebody's going to get hurt. It's just a matter of time at Government Wharf. And I heard a couple of weeks ago, a young girl almost drowned there.
Wow.
So it's very, very real. And the mom didn't even see it. And I know somebody that was there and witnessed the whole thing. And it was just minutes and that little girl would have been gone. And that was just 2 weeks ago. And I can't believe that wasn't all over Facebook.
Wow.
So we can't afford to leave things the way they are. And we do
No.
need people to step up and
Yeah.
make this positive change happen. What I'd like to do, I'm just keeping an eye on the time because I wish we could solve all of our issues in this 1 hour, but we have just barely scratched the surface. I would like to give our president, Steve Elskins, the last word. And I'm going to share a screen and thank the Shawnigan Focus for publishing our president's speech from our charter party. Here it is in the paper. And Steve, would you like to speak to the picture that you'd like to paint? So I noticed that your last word was that you look forward to painting this picture of a world that people want to go to.
Yeah, and I think this is how I would summarize what has been said here today. I mean, a lot of issues have been brought up here today. I think we need to first assess what our priorities are and bring all the players together, like some people have said. We also have to think about what our privilege is to actually live in this place, and to think about our what is called now settler privilege. So that sense of inclusivity is really important to me. At this point, I don't want to really add too much to the discussion here. I think a lot of things have been said. I'm just wanting to listen mostly to people, and then maybe start action groups from there. What I hear is that the lake is obviously a very important issue for all our people here that live here. Obviously, it's a central location and everybody likes to use it in their way. So maybe we need to come up with some sort of community action group where we invite all the players, all the people that use the lake to come together and have some conversations with everyone, with the homeowners, with the people that live on the lake, with the kayakers, with the boaters, everyone to come together, because I don't think it's very conducive to any kind of efficiency to stay in these little bubbles as we are right now and talk about we should do this and we should do that. We should bring all the parties together and then have multiple conversations about this. I think that's the way to proceed.
I agree, Steve. That's a very important point, because yeah, we can. It's like the same thing. You know, we can all talk about it and you know, say, well, we can do this, we can do that. But if there's a collective agreement, that's something that's actually enforceable, and like take our ideas of the positive peer pressure, but that's just a community standard. That's not even you know, people are watching or this or that anymore. It's like, no, that's just how it works out here now. We've all collectively agreed throughout all the local organizations and residents that this is the lake etiquette, because this isn't just a Shawnigan problem. Like, we were out at Lake Cowichan in the no wake zone and somebody went by plowing their boat and we were in a tin boat and they almost capsized us. We had to jump off. And it was just like, we're in the no wake zone and the dude didn't even look at us, just like kept going on by. And it's like, there's people swimming around here and you're blowing by in your boat. And so it needs to be something that's collectively agreed upon, and that it's just, you know, whether it's, you know, obvious signage at all the major access points, or, you know, there is a steward or a clerk that's out there to go deal with all of these things. Like, it does take funding, and if the whole community agrees upon it, then that's something that can actually get put into action.
I am going to add a couple of comments. None of this is enforceable by any law governing body, and anything that is enforceable, it's just not being enforced. So it really, that's why I suggest creating a sense of place and a real pride where there is a peer pressure and everybody just kind of, you come to Shawnigan and this is what Shawnigan is. But that brand is so strong and prevalent that you feel it when you get here. And there have been, Steve, many, countless conversations with different groups over the years. And there is a real volunteer fatigue here at Shawnigan. And it's always the same people. And really, what needs to happen is one person that just says, I'm going to take this is what I'm going to do, and stick handle it and just see it through. But it takes time and a lot of effort. And, you know, I was really hoping that when we had the meeting with the Ministry of Transportation regarding road ends, that the residents of Butler Bay would really take it on and take charge. And I thought they were organized, and it's just gone completely quiet. So I commend you, Dinah, for doing what you're doing. I know where Dinah is, and I think that is a really great place for us to start coming out of this meeting here today, is what Dinah's doing, and seeing how we can, for lack of better words, brand that and replicate it and actually make that a public thing. And maybe it's an article in the Focus that says, hey, here's our waterfront watch. This is what it looks like. This is what we as residents are doing to combat all the different issues that we're seeing happening in and around Shawnigan, from garbage to boats to milfoil to how we behave. I think it's brilliant.
And it fits within our mandate as a Rotary
Yeah.
Club to
Yeah.
replicate and amplify this type of great work. So
Yeah,
thank
so
you.
so like I was saying, Kim, it's like just do to be seen, and then eventually people will follow. And you know, if we're successful kind of replicating what Dinah's doing, let's say in 3 different parts of the lake where residents have actually bought into it, well then when you go to the governing agencies like CDRD and the MOTI and fisheries and all the other ones, you can say this is what we've done collectively as waterfront owners. Like we're here, like this is what we've done. We show an effort. We're not going to them and saying we want you to do all the work. We can say here's our system. This is what we've done. How can you support us moving forward? Rather than going to them and saying, well, what can you do for us?
Modeling.
Yeah.
And the focus continues to put the guidelines for lake usage. What's it called now, Lori?
Yes.
But the wrong people are reading that. I hate to say it, like the people that need to see that are the people that are going to the boat launches and the people that are at the galley. Those are the like if we're going to spend any time at all, is taking that map and actually just standing at Clarahue and hoping you don't get beat up and handing it to people and saying, this is the etiquette on the lake. And also then talking to the RCMP and say to the RCMP, how can you help us enforce this?
Oh, that's a whole other subject, the RCMP on the lake or the lack thereof.
And another example,
I know.
Kim, another example of etiquette that you touched on. For years and years here on the lake, the power boats did not go out until after 8 o'clock so that the kayakers and the people who had canoes could have that quiet time. So that's been lost. And again, probably because it didn't get passed on. And so there is some local responsibility for that. By the way, did you know? Just a casual but pointed comment.
One thing that we went out to Roth Trevor Beach in Parksville, and they had like there was just a lady who was a volunteer there, and she had a booth set up, and then it was it said Park Ambassador, and it was all branded up and stuff.
Nice.
And yeah,
Nice.
and she handed out and she lets you know about like, okay, you can't use the campsite showers, but this is where there's a wash station. You can fill up water bottles and stuff and rinse yourself off with the seawater. And even if even though there might not be an enforcement officer out on that beach, the first thing you see when you walk out of the parking lot is a park ambassador. There's an official person right there. Now, there's nobody on the beach enforcing anything, but she has like, okay, this is where all the garbage cans are, and like, no, she handed us a brochure, and there was like, etiquette and this or that all on the brochure, and sure, we didn't read the brochure, but you still made that connection right away when somebody was there. It's like, there is somebody here watching, like this is a cared for area. And there is some sort of official capacity of an expectation of behavior here.
Eyes on the lake.
Yeah.
I'd like to end on a positive note as we wrap up at 9:19, is to say that there is an opportunity here. So with every problem, there is always an opportunity. And I think what the world needs now is that positive messaging to win them over with honey and to show them the correct behavior. In terms of parenting, you don't want to always be yelling at your people, but you want to actually be encouraging them and showing them the right way. So I believe we can learn a lot as well from our First Nations who have done that for generations, in terms of the elders showing the young ones how to walk the walk and talk the talk. And so there is a responsibility we all have. And I would like to identify those denizens of our lake community who do have this knowledge. So Marcy, maybe you can help us with that. Because you may also know those story keepers, and Lori, the same way. We can really give them a sense of calling for this next phase that we're in as we gather again responsibly. I want to thank everyone who's been on the call today. There is so much we could say. We are standing by. I'm going to be saving the chat and also taking any other follow-up conversations that we might be having. So you can email us at Shawnigan Rotary EcoClub @gmail.com, and also follow us at our website and social media. Our website is shawniganrotaryecoclub.ca. And as I mentioned before, it will be revamped this month. So it will include positive messaging and imaging, as well as access to resources and lists of the existing groups that work so hard to, in their own way, tell our stories and help us be good stewards. So thank you, Ben. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Netta. It's been wonderful sharing with you, and you will find this recording later on YouTube. So I'm going to end the recording now, and then we can wrap up.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you. Thank